Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today I want to talk about why I review books. So I talked before on the channel about why I do YouTube, how the channel came about and things like that. But I've never really talked about why I review books. So why the channel is about books, other than clearly the fact that I really, really like books. And my history of reviewing books is a lot longer than, this channel has been around for. So I've been doing it for, probably 10 years or so. And the reason I do it clearly is because, I like books, I like reading, I like talking about what I'm reading. And I think common with many people, I didn't in my, my personal life, in my real life, have that many people to talk about books with. So, the online space has given me that, that community of people to discuss books with. So this video is actually one that's kind of, or the prompt for this video, the reason I'm making this video is something that's happened within the horror writing and reading community recently. So an author called Matt Shaw published a book a while ago. I can't remember which book it was actually the review was about. Somebody, a female reviewer, reviewed it on YouTube. And she didn't even do a full review of it. I think it was in like a wrap-up video of books she'd read that year. And she really didn't enjoy the book, and she was vocal about the fact she hadn't enjoyed it. Matt Shaw saw that video, was offended by it, and subsequently has written a book dedicated to her, which feels like a bit of a dick move, to be honest with you. A slightly kind of immature and aggressive thing to do. But this video isn't about that. So off the back of that, there has been on Twitter in particular a kind of discussion of within the horror community of the relationship between readers and writers. And one author whose name I forget, so not an author I'd heard of before or have read, put up a series of tweets about that, where he said that he felt, and this is a direct quote, that 90% of reviewers or book bloggers are leeches on the industry. So he has a very, very negative review, a very, very negative view of people like me who, in an amateurish fashion, make videos or write reviews of books. And he goes on to say that he thinks that only people who can do a thing are qualified to really, comment on that thing, which seems a bizarre thing to say. And the way he's kind of framing his discussion seems to be that, it's almost like he's saying that this is something that only occurs in the publishing space. Whereas in fact, as any cursory glance of YouTube or kind of Twitter or WordPress or whatever will show you that for every form of entertainment there's something similar to booktube or book blogs. So there are loads of channels on YouTube making videos about movies, about video games. There are loads of blogs about movies and video games and so on and so forth. And even outside of the entertainment industry, things like cosmetics, there are loads of people doing reviews of different cosmetics. I'm into watches, so I post, short videos of my watches every so often. There are hundreds and hundreds of people who make, YouTube videos of reviewing watches. There are loads of watch blogs and things like that. And all of these people are people who are passionate about the thing that they're making content about, as I am about books. And I feel like, in all of these different industries, that's just the way that commerce runs nowadays. So, big companies, to an extent, rely on people like me reviewing their products and getting the word out about their products, because it's it's effectively free advertising for them, and it's that kind of word of mouth advertising that is really, really valuable to companies, but also to independent authors. And that's one of the things hopefully you've seen I try and do on the channel, is talk about independent authors as well as bigger, more established authors, because they need that publicity more than the bigger authors who have a publishing company with a publicity budget behind them. So every form of industry has this kind of mutually beneficial relationship between the people who are creating the product, be that a book, a movie, a lipstick, a watch, whatever, and amateurs like me who enjoy talking about that thing. And it's a mutually beneficial thing. So I couldn't make my videos if people weren't writing and publishing books. I sometimes get sent books by publishers or authors, which I use to make videos on the channel, and in return for that, they get a bit of publicity. I don't, by any means guarantee that I'm going to give a positive review to a book just because someone sent it to me, but I do sometimes get books for free, and I will always declare in a video that an author or a publisher has sent me a copy of a book. So it's a mutually beneficial thing, and it's it's exactly the same across all the different kind of industries I've talked about. So why do I review books in particular? And when I set up the channel, I did consider making a watch channel. So as I said before, I set up the channel to win a bet with my kid as to who could get to 100 subscribers first. I could have made a watch channel. I considered making a watch channel. I decided to make a book channel instead because I'm kind of into books more than I'm into watches, and I felt like I had more to say about books. But as I said earlier, my history of reviewing books is a lot longer than YouTube. So I've always loved books. I've always enjoyed reading, and I've always enjoyed talking to people, to other people, to other readers about the books I'm reading. And what I discovered was, and this has probably always been the case throughout my life, is that, there weren't necessarily that many people that I could talk to the books I was really enjoying about. So there may be some people in my real life that I could talk to about books, but, not as many as I'd like. And I read quite widely, quite diversely. So there was certainly no one person that I could talk to all the different kinds of books I enjoyed about. And as the as the online communities and the online world grew, I saw that there were other people out there talking about books, and there was a community of people that I could engage with and discuss books with, and share favourite reads with, share my passion for reading with, and that grew for me from fairly small beginnings into what you see today, I guess. And I think this is probably the same for many people. So I started chatting about books online through Twitter. So I think I'd seen people I followed on Twitter using the currently reading tag, and I started doing that and would discuss, if I saw someone was reading a book that was, one I'd heard of and was interested in, or that looked interesting, I might reply to their tweet and, chat with them about it. And that kind of grew from there into me getting into the book community on Instagram, and then starting my own blog. So I've had a few different blogs over the years, most of which have kind of failed. But I've tried different ways of reviewing books through WordPress and places like that, as well as doing reviews on Twitter and on Instagram in particular. At one point I used to do quite lengthy reviews on Instagram, and also of course Goodreads. So I log everything I read on Goodreads. I leave reviews on Goodreads, not all the time, but quite often. And that's been another good way for me to engage with other readers and to talk about books. And that's all I do on the channel now, is talk about books. That's why I do this. It's what I enjoy doing. So through my own blog, I then ended up writing for a website called Sci-Fi and Scary, which sadly is no longer around. And that kind of grew the number of people I was in touch with in the community. So it's been for me a kind of gradual growth from kind of one-to-one communication, I guess, with people on Twitter about what I was reading, to I suppose a one-to-many form of communication with all of you and people who read my blog. Albeit, what I would say is my efforts in blogging were never anywhere near as successful as my YouTube channel has been. I don't know why that is. I would never have predicted, as someone who's very introverted and who enjoys writing. I've always enjoyed writing, ever since I was at school, and indeed at school, when I was studying English, when our assignment was to write a book review, I always really enjoyed that. So I always would have expected I would have more success doing written reviews than making videos, but it's been the other way around, which is fantastic, and I really enjoy doing the channel. So for me, it's all about that, that communication with other readers. It's about sharing my my enjoyment of the books. And there's something wonderful about reading a book and really enjoying it and sharing it on the channel, and then have someone come back in a comment to say, I read that book you recommended, it was great, I really enjoyed it. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes people come back and say, I read that book you recommended, it was awful, I DNF'd it. But often people will come back and say, thanks for recommending that book. And I have picked up so many recommendations as well through both through watching other people's videos on YouTube, but also through comments. So quite often, if I've read or made a video about a particular book, people in the comments will recommend other books, either by the same author or in a similar vein or whatever. And I've found some fantastic reads, through the comments people have left. So I really appreciate it when people leave recommendations in the comments. As I say, I've found some wonderful books through that process. And what I tend to try and do is then share those books, with all of my audience by talking about them on the channel. So that's why I review books. Because I can't not talk about books, and reviewing books gives me a wonderful outlet that I really enjoy, and that I have got to meet some great people through and discover some great books through. And all of that makes me think that author couldn't be more wrong. And in fact, the more people we have reviewing books, the better. Because the more people who are reviewing books, the more different opinions we're going to get, the more likely we are to find reviewers whose tastes overlap with our own. And therefore, the more likely we are to find our next great book. So I hope you found that interesting. Interested to hear from other people who review books. That could be on blogs, that could be on Goodreads or Instagram, or who've got channels on YouTube. I'm interested to hear why how you got into reviewing, and what you get out of it, why you enjoy it so much. But I'll leave it there for now and say, as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.